because that's when the compilation should occur. And it's still giving me some issues with incorrect references. So I'm still unsure I'm going to the right place with my Kendo. So I'm going to Kendo, jQuery min. So that, I mean, that should be okay, but so let's just move past that for now. So I declared the Kendo there, and let's see if we can get it to actually spit out some JavaScript that's useful here. One of the other things I've found with TypeScript is that sometimes it is doing things in the background. See, so even though it's not showing us that, it didn't actually compile it correctly. So you can actually open the JS and see what it did. So it is having compilation errors. So we definitely need to fix whatever issue we're having with the references up there. While we're doing that, let me just fire off another version of Visual Studio. I have the completed version behind the scenes, so if we need to, we can go to that, and I can just kind of walk you through and compare where we ran into trouble here. But I think one thing you can take away from this is that, you know, TypeScript is still in a beta state right now. So if you go to, if we go back to the slides here, and we go to the reference slide, there's a roadmap on here. Down here, this roadmap here will kind of tell you what they're trying to do, where they're trying to get to, as far as when this will actually be released and what pieces and portions of it they're planning to do with every release. So if we look at this, right now I'm using 8.3, so it's not even a 1.0 version as it stands now. In 9.0, they're going to bring in generics and do some improvements with performance. And then 1X, you know, basically they're going to, you know, bring in some of the other nice features that you get from C#. And at that point, I think, you know, once they get to 1X, that's when they're going to do their current release. But right now they're back here on 8.3, so they've got a few revs to go through before it's ready. My suspicions is that build is in June, and my suspicions are they're going to try to get it all ready and repackaged and ready to go for that particular conference. But I don't know for sure if that is the case. So let's just open the completed one, since we're a little short on time, so that I can just show you what it looks like when it's all done. Okay. There it finally comes. So let's do File, let's open. Over here. So let's just go into my completed. I always keep a completed version just in case something like this happens. Connect. And while that's opening up, I can just talk to a little bit, because I don't think we're going to have time for the Windows 8 TypeScript stuff. But in Windows 8, TypeScript is supported, so you can have a .ts file, but they don't have the tooling that you have for the web yet. So you can't right-click and say add new TypeScript file. You have to basically just create a JavaScript file and then rename it as .ts. And then at that point, the compiler kicks in and it knows kind of how to compile the JavaScript. But you know, it's not nearly as pleasant as a experience as you get with this web experience that we have here. So let's go look at the view model that I created for the completed version. And you'll see up here, see I did the declare, maybe that was because I didn't say var in there, so that may have been what was throwing me off in my other one. We can look at that once we get there. And then I didn't have jQuery up here, which is interesting as well. So but so you can see here that this one is actually working, because I do actually have the JavaScript that it created and spit out for me on the other side. And again, you'll notice a lot of this stuff, you know, I'm exporting this particular class, you know, so if I took that export off, then no one would be able, it would make it a private variable, and you wouldn't be able to call it, you know, from TypeScript. Again, this is all about intent. So if I was writing just a JavaScript file, I could still call that variable if I wanted to, even though I had marked it as private in TypeScript. Regular JavaScript doesn't know anything about that. So you got to be a little bit careful if you're going back and forth from TypeScript to JavaScript. So real quick, I just want to show you some of the only other changes that you need to do. So now I have this this TS file, and it's spitting out these two JavaScript files. So now what I need to do in order to actually use the TypeScript version is I just have to modify my views to reference the new version that I'm spitting out. So if we go into these views, you'll see now I'm using right here, I'm using my cover sheet TS and my view model .ts instead of the actual JavaScript that I'm using. So it's still using the JavaScript in the page, and as far as the server's concerned and everything else, it's just a JavaScript file. But as far as the tooling is concerned, it's TypeScript, and the tooling can intercept some of that stuff and add some extra syntax and value at compile time or design time. And then the other thing, the other thing that I did have to do down here too is, again, remember I changed. So this is where Kendo actually does the binding as far as sets up the two-way binding when you're doing observables and MVVM. And so what I did have to add down here as well is I had to add that module that namespace to the front of the value so that it knew how to get to the TPS cover sheet VM. And the reason I point that out is it's important because, again, it helps you componentize your code so that if someone else happened to create a variable called TPS cover sheet VM in one of their JavaScript libraries, it wouldn't get confused with the one that I was expecting because I had put a namespace on there. So, or a module name if you want to use a normal TypeScript talk. So we can run this, but I think you guys probably get the point that it's all working and it's spitting out JS. And so the other thing that I'd like to mention there is that not only is it spitting out JS, but what that allows you to do now is you can plug it into all your other JS optimizations that you're doing, the minification, the bundling, all that type of stuff that you do with JavaScript. Again, you can just target that JS file and it'll move all that in for you. So let's go through a few. Let's just kind of wrap up here. I know it's almost 1 o'clock, so let's go ahead and just wrap up. I know we started a little late, so I'm going to go just a few minutes late. But let me just summarize real quick, and then I want to show you a few of these resources so that we can kind of look at what's coming, again, with that roadmap. So what we talked about, again, was, to me anyways, what's some of JavaScript's shortcoming from a C# developer. It's dynamically typed, which leads to runtime errors, and it also, for me anyways, it hurts my productivity because I find myself, having to run the application to see if it works over and over again. And so if I've made any syntax errors, I don't see those until I run it, and then I figure out, okay, it didn't work, and I've got to debug it that way. So it provides some design time. So again, TypeScript provides some static typing and some design time feedback for developers to make their JavaScript development a lot smoother. And then also, you can use it there's tooling involved for Visual Studio for Windows 8 apps and for web apps, but there's also a bunch of open source plugins. Mike, I know you showed me you had TypeScript in yours. Is that WebStorm that you're using?
No, I don't use TypeScript, but WebStorm uses, they have a different approach. So rather than parsing the document, they use JavaDoc-like attributes that you can put in there, and so it will infer types based off of that.
Gotcha, gotcha, right. So the comment there was that WebStorm has its own attributing type system that allows you to provide intent as well. And then some of the others that are out there that are kind of popular are like CoffeeScript. And CoffeeScript takes a different approach in that it's not really even JavaScript syntax. So it's almost like learning another language, and then it does compile to JavaScript when it's all said and done, but it's not a quote-unquote superset to JavaScript. So you kind of have to almost learn the CoffeeScript language in order to use CoffeeScript. Whereas in this case, to use TypeScript, all the syntax and everything is still JavaScript, There's just extra keywords and extra attributes added in is basically what it comes down to.